She sat quietly in the notary's office, her hands trembling as she clutched her purse. Beside her, her husband and his mistress laughed openly, their cruel whispers echoing in her ears. They thought the day would end with her humiliation. They thought they had already won, but none of them knew what was written in her mother-in-law's will, and when the lawyer began to read, the room fell silent. Emily never imagined her life would come to this. Married for nearly 12 years, she had built her world around her husband, Mark. She believed in him, trusted him, and sacrificed everything for their life together. She had given up her own career dreams to support his business, managed their home with care, and stood by him through every hardship. But none of that mattered. The first crack in her marriage appeared when Emily discovered a perfume scent on his shirt. At first, she ignored it, convincing herself it was nothing. Then came the late nights, the missed calls, the distant look in his eyes whenever she asked simple questions. And then, the truth. Mark had a mistress. Not only that, but he flaunted her openly. The woman, Vanessa, was younger, louder, and unashamed. Emily overheard their laughter in her own home, saw the cruel smirks exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking. It felt like a knife twisting deeper every single day. But what cut deepest wasn't just Mark's betrayal. It was his mother's silence. Margaret, Emily's mother-in-law, had always been a strong, stern woman. She wasn't the type to shower love or give easy praise, but she had always respected Emily's loyalty. In quiet moments, she would pull Emily aside, reminding her, "You're the backbone of this family." Those words had kept Emily going during her darkest nights. Then, unexpectedly, Margaret fell gravely ill. Her health deteriorated quickly, and within months, she was gone. Emily was devastated. Margaret had been the only person who truly seemed to see her, to value her beyond the role of being just Mark's wife. Now, just weeks after the funeral, the family was gathered at the notary's office to hear Margaret's will. Emily sat stiffly, trying to hold herself together. Mark leaned back in his chair, one arm draped casually around Vanessa's shoulders. Their laughter hushed but pointed. Every sound they made was like a taunt, a reminder of everything Emily had lost. Mark whispered loudly enough for Emily to hear, "Don't worry, babe. Once Mum's estate is settled, we'll finally have the life we deserve." Vanessa giggled, her nails tapping against his chest. Emily's stomach churned. She wanted to walk out, to escape the suffocating humiliation. But something deep inside told her to stay. Margaret had asked her specifically to be there. Emily couldn't shake the feeling that her mother-in-law had left her with a message, something important, something Mark could never take away. The notary, a middle-aged man with glasses perched low on his nose, cleared his throat. The room quieted instantly. "This is the last will and testament of Margaret Whitfield," he began. In her own words, she has outlined how her estate, including property, savings, and personal assets, shall be divided. Emily clasped her hands tightly together, bracing herself for the inevitable for everything to go to Mark. While she was left with nothing, the notary continued. "To my son, Mark Whitfield, I leave." He paused, glancing down at the paper again as though to make sure he had read it correctly. "A single dollar?" The room went dead silent. Mark sat up straight, his face twisting with confusion. "What?" Vanessa's smile faded, replaced with a stunned stare. The notary repeated calmly, $1. Mark's voice rose in anger. This must be a mistake. But the notary wasn't finished. "And to my daughter-in-law, Emily Whitfield, the woman who showed me loyalty, strength, and dignity when others showed me betrayal, I leave the remainder of my estate, including my house, my savings, and the family business." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. The room around her blurred, but one thing was clear. Her mother-in-law had seen everything. Mark's chair scraped against the floor as he jumped to his feet. His voice boomed in the room, furious, desperate. "No, this isn't possible. She can't do this to me." But she had. And as the notary continued to read, Emily realized her life was about to change in ways none of them had expected. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the sound of Mark's labored breathing. His face had turned red, veins bulging in his neck as he slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. She was 6, didn't know what she was doing. Mark shouted, his voice echoing against the paneled walls. The notary calmly adjusted his glasses. Mr. Whitfield, your mother signed this document in full awareness. There are witnesses on file, and her signature is legally binding. Emily sat frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had expected humiliation, not victory. She could feel Mark's burning glare on her skin. Across the table, Vanessa leaned forward, whispering something in his ear. Whatever she said only fueled his rage. Mark pointed at Emily. You think you've won, don't you? You think this changes anything? This is just paper. I'll contest it. I'll tear it apart. And when I'm finished, you'll be left with nothing. Emily flinched at his words, but before she could speak, the notary raised a hand. Mr. Whitfield, I must remind you that any attempt to contest a will without grounds can cost you heavily. Your mother made her wishes very clear. Mark's jaw clenched. He looked like a man about to explode, but instead of speaking, he stormed out of the office, dragging Vanessa behind him. She cast Emily one last venomous glance before disappearing through the door. For a long moment, Emily remained seated, staring down at her trembling hands. She had not asked for any of this, yet it had fallen on her shoulders. The estate, the house, even the business. It was overwhelming. The notary's voice pulled her back. Mrs. Whitfield, your mother-in-law trusted you with everything. You should know she left a personal letter addressed to you. A chill swept over Emily's skin as the notary handed her an envelope, sealed in thick cream-colored paper with Margaret's distinctive handwriting. On the front, Emily's fingers shook as she took it. She didn't open it right away. Not there, not in front of anyone. She left the office quietly. Clutching the envelope like it was her lifeline that evening, Emily sat alone in Margaret's study, the room her mother-in-law had spent hours in, surrounded by shelves of old books and the faint smell of lavender. The envelope sat on the desk in front of her. Finally, she broke the seal. The letter inside was written in Margaret's firm, elegant script. Emily, if you're reading this, then I am gone. But no, I saw everything. I saw my son's betrayal, his arrogance, his blindness to what truly matters. You, Emily, were the one who stood by me when I was sick, who cared for me when no one else bothered. You deserve better than to be cast aside. That is why I've given everything to you, not just as protection, but as power. Be careful. Mark will not accept this easily. He is my son, but I know him well. He is dangerous when desperate. Trust yourself, and trust no one else. There are things in this family you do not yet know, and now, they are yours to uncover. Emily's breath caught as she finished reading. Her hand clutched the letter tighter, her mind racing with Margaret's words. Things you do not yet know. What did that mean? What secrets had Margaret carried to her grave? Before she could think further, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. Enjoy the money while you can. Soon, it'll be mine again. Her blood ran cold. She didn't need to guess who it was from. Mark wasn't done with her, and this was only the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. Emily set her phone down, heart hammering. Margaret's words echoed in her mind. He is dangerous when desperate. And she knew now, more than ever, that she had stepped into a storm far bigger than she had imagined. Because Mark didn't just want revenge. He wanted everything, and he would stop at nothing to get it back. The message glared back at Emily from the screen. Enjoy the money while you can. Soon, it'll be mine again. Her hands went cold. She wanted to ignore it, to convince herself it was nothing more than empty threats. But deep inside, she knew Mark. She had seen that fire in his eyes. The entitlement that made him believe everything, people, property, love belonged to him. He wouldn't stop. Emily slipped Margaret's letter back into its envelope and locked it away in the desk drawer. She needed time to process, to think. But the weight of her new reality pressed down on her like an iron chain. The estate wasn't just a house and some savings. It was a vast property with multiple businesses tied to Margaret's name: restaurants, rental spaces, and even an old vineyard on the outskirts of town, all now hers. Emily had never managed such things before. She felt both unworthy and unprepared that night. As she sat in the silent living room, she couldn't shake Margaret's warning. There are things in this family you do not yet know. What had Margaret meant? Emily's thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She froze. It was late, nearly midnight. Her heart hammered as she peered through the window. A car she didn't recognize was parked in the driveway, and standing at the door was a man in a dark coat. For a moment, fear rooted her in place, but then he knocked again, softer this time. Against her better judgment, Emily opened the door a crack. "Mrs. Whitfield?" the man asked. His voice was low, cautious. "Yes," she replied, keeping the chain on the door. I worked for Margaret. I helped her manage some of her properties. My name is Daniel. Before she passed, she asked me to deliver something to you. Said it was important." Emily's chest tightened. "What is it?" Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out a small box, plain and wooden, about the size of a jewelry case. He slid it through the gap in the door. "She said you'd understand when the time came," Daniel added. His expression was tense, almost warning. "Be careful, Mrs. Whitfield. Not everyone is happy with how things turned out." Before Emily could ask more, he turned and walked back to the car, disappearing into the night. Emily stared at the box in her hands. She placed it on the coffee table and opened it slowly. Inside was a single brass key, old and heavy. Attached to a note written in Margaret's handwriting, "The answers you seek are where it all began. Don't trust anyone." Emily's breath caught. Where it all began. Did that mean Margaret's childhood home? The vineyard? Or something else entirely? Before she could think further, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Mark. "You think you're safe in that house? Remember, Emily walls have ears. And I know all the cracks." Her blood ran cold. Was he watching her? She rushed to the window, pulling the curtains closed. Panic surged in her chest. Was this paranoia, or was Mark truly outside, watching every move she made? The next morning, Emily drove to the vineyard, a property Margaret had loved, but hadn't visited in years. The air was crisp, the land sprawling with rows of neglected vines. She clutched the brass key tightly, scanning the area for anything that might make sense. At the back of the property stood an old storage shed. Its door rusted shut with a heavy lock. Emily's pulse quickened. The key slid into the lock perfectly. With a shaky breath, she turned it. The door creaked open, revealing stacks of boxes, old files, and furniture covered in dust. She stepped inside, her flashlight cutting through the shadows. The smell of earth and age filled the air. In one corner, she noticed a trunk with Margaret's initials carved into the lid. She knelt down and opened it. Inside were papers, old contracts, bank records, and letters. But as Emily flipped through them, her heart began to race. Margaret hadn't just left her the estate. She had left her evidence. Evidence of Mark's shady business dealings. Hidden debts, even records of money secretly funneled to Vanessa. Emily's hands shook as she realized what this meant. Margaret hadn't simply disinherited her son, she had prepared a weapon against him. And now that weapon was in Emily's hands. But the question was, what would she do with it? Outside, a twig snapped. Emily froze, her flashlight trembling in her grip. Slowly, she turned toward the sound. Through the crack in the shed door, she saw a shadow move across the vineyard. Someone was there, watching her, and she knew, without a doubt, that Mark was closer than she thought. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she crouched inside the shed. Clutching the trunk of documents, her pulse thudded in her ears. The shadow outside moved again, slow, deliberate. Like a predator circling prey. Her mind screamed at her to stay hidden, but her gut told her she had already been found. She reached into the trunk, grabbed the thickest folder she could, and shoved it into her bag. Then, with trembling fingers, she switched off the flashlight and pressed herself against the wall. The shed door creaked slightly. Shifting under pressure, someone was testing it. Emily's lungs burned as she held her breath. Then, suddenly, silence. The shadow disappeared. Minutes dragged like hours before she dared to move. Finally, she slipped out the back of the shed and sprinted to her car, gravel crunching beneath her shoes. Her hands fumbled with the keys, but she managed to start the engine and drive off. Heart racing the entire way home, when she pulled into the driveway, she forced herself to breathe. But something was wrong. Her front door was ajar. Emily froze, fear gripping her chest. Slowly, she stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of cologne, a scent she knew all too well. Mark had been there. The living room was untouched. But in the kitchen, she found a wine glass on the counter. Next to it, a note scrawled in bold handwriting. "You can't hide from me. You're sitting on something that belongs to me. Hand it over before I take it." Emily's hands shook as she crumpled the note. He had been inside her sanctuary. He had crossed the line. But she couldn't call the police, not yet. Mark was clever, charming to outsiders. Without proof, he'd twist everything to make her look unstable, bitter, vengeful. She thought back to the folder she had taken from the shed. With shaking fingers, she opened it on the dining table. Inside were bank transfers, offshore accounts, and a string of signed contracts, all under Mark's name. Fraud, tax evasion, theft. Enough to ruin him forever. Margaret hadn't just protected her. She had given her a weapon that could destroy her son's empire. But using it meant risk. If Mark knew she had this, he would become even more dangerous. Her phone rang suddenly, jolting her from her thoughts. The caller ID flashed a name she didn't expect. Daniel. She answered cautiously. "Hello. Emily, listen." Daniel's voice was urgent, hushed. "You're in danger. Mark came to see me today. He knows I delivered the box. He threatened me." Emily's grip tightened on the phone. "What did he say?" "He said, if I didn't tell him what I gave you, he'd make me regret it." "I didn't say anything, but Emily, he's desperate. Be careful. He's not going to stop." Her throat went dry. "Thank you for telling me." Daniel hesitated. "There's something else. Margaret told me, before she died, that if anything happened to her estate, you'd need help. She wanted me to protect you. But I need to know. What was in the box?" Emily's eyes flicked to the folder of incriminating evidence. Could she trust him, or was this another trap? Margaret had written in her note, "Don't trust anyone." Before she could answer, a loud crash came from outside. Glass shattering, Emily's blood turned to ice. She dropped the phone and rushed to the window. The headlights of a car glared into her driveway, and in the darkness, she saw him. Mark. He was standing outside, his hands gripping a baseball bat. His expression was twisted with rage, his eyes wild. "Emily," he shouted, his voice cutting through the night. "I know what you have, and I'm not leaving without it." The bat slammed against the hood of her car, denting the metal with a sickening crunch. Emily stumbled back, fear seizing every part of her. She had seconds to decide: run, hide, or fight. Her eyes darted to the folder on the table, to Margaret's letter still tucked safely in the drawer. The pieces of the puzzle were in her hands, but survival meant acting fast. She grabbed the folder, stuffed it back into her bag, and darted toward the back door. Her hands trembled as she unlocked it, slipping out into the cold night air. The crunch of Mark's footsteps echoed behind her. He was coming. And Emily realized this was no longer about inheritance, or betrayal, or even revenge. This was survival. Emily ran through the backyard, her bag slung tightly across her shoulder. The night was dark, the grass damp beneath her feet. Behind her, Mark's voice echoed through the air like a hunting call. "Emily, don't make this harder than it needs to be." She didn't look back. She darted toward the woods that bordered the estate, her lungs burning as branches scraped against her arms. Her mind screamed with fear, but another thought kept pushing through. Margaret's warning: trust no one. Protect yourself. She couldn't run forever. At some point, she'd have to face him. The sound of Mark's footsteps grew closer, heavier. The man was fueled by rage, his bat smashing against tree trunks as he moved. "Do you think you're smarter than me? That letter, those papers, they don't mean anything. They're mine. All of it is mine." Emily stumbled over a root and fell hard against the ground. Pain shot through her knee, but she forced herself up, limping deeper into the trees. She clutched her bag tighter. Inside, it was her only defense, the folder of evidence Margaret had left her. Finally, she spotted a dim light through the branches. Relief surged through her chest. It was the caretaker's cabin, on the far side of the vineyard. Daniel sometimes stayed there when repairs were needed. Maybe, just maybe, he was inside. Emily banged on the door, desperate. "Daniel, open up." The door creaked, and to her relief, Daniel appeared, his face pale with shock at the sight of her. "Emily, what happened?" "No time to explain." She pushed past him, slamming the door shut behind her. "He's here, Mark. He's after me. He knows." Daniel's eyes widened, and he quickly slid the lock into place. Okay, stay calm." He grabbed his phone. "I'll call the police." But Emily hesitated. Could they get there in time? And more importantly, could she really trust Daniel? Margaret's warning replayed in her mind, "Don't trust anyone." Before she could decide, the sound of footsteps thudded outside the cabin. Then came Mark's furious voice. "Emily, I know you're in there. Don't make me break this door down." The wood rattled under the weight of his fist. Emily's hands shook. She pulled the folder from her bag and shoved it at Daniel. "If anything happens to me, take this to the police, promise me." Daniel hesitated, then nodded, his eyes serious. "I promise." The door shuddered again. This time, the lock splintered. The door burst open, and Mark stormed inside, bat raised, his face twisted with fury. "Give it to me," he roared, his eyes locking on the folder in Daniel's hands. For a moment, the room froze in chaos. Emily backing away, Daniel gripping the folder, Mark advancing like a storm, and then it happened. Emily's fear turned to fire. "No," she shouted, her voice shaking but fierce. "You don't get to take everything from me anymore." Margaret saw who you really were, Mark. She knew, and now everyone else will too. Mark's rage boiled over. He lunged at her, swinging the bat. Emily ducked. The weapon smashed into the wall behind her. Splinters flew. Daniel moved then, stepping between them. He raised the folder high in the air. "It's over, Mark. You can't bury this. It's all here, your fraud, your theft, everything. If you hurt her, this goes straight to the cops." Mark's face twisted with panic. For the first time, Emily saw fear in his eyes, but desperation made him reckless. He lunged at Daniel, trying to snatch the folder. The two men struggled, the papers spilling across the floor like confetti. Emily's gaze darted to the phone on the table. Her chance. She grabbed it, her fingers dialing 911 as her heart pounded. "Help!" she shouted into the receiver. "My husband is attacking us. Please, send someone now." Mark froze when he heard the words. His bat slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. Sirens in the distance cut through the night, air loud, sharp, undeniable. No, he muttered, backing toward the door. His arrogance cracked, replaced by panic. "This isn't over, Emily. You hear me? It's never over." But before he could flee, flashing red and blue lights lit up the vineyard. Officers stormed in, tackling him before he could escape. His shouts of rage echoed through the cabin as they dragged him away, his eyes burning with hatred, even in handcuffs. Emily stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. Relief, fear, and grief tangled in her chest. She clutched Margaret's letter to her heart. It was finally over. In the days that followed, the truth spread quickly. Mark's crimes were exposed in court, his reputation shattered. Vanessa disappeared from the picture entirely. And for the first time in years, Emily felt the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. Yet one thought lingered, haunting her like a whisper. Margaret's words, "There are things in this family you do not yet know." What other secrets had her mother-in-law hidden? And what would Emily discover, now that the estate and its mysteries were hers alone? She didn't have the answers yet. But one thing was certain, Emily had survived. She had taken back her life, and she would never be the same again.